Hello everybody and welcome back to Tyrion Cuthbert, Attorney of the Arcane. Last time, we realized that Harold Harroldson and his monkey were involved in the crime, so now we're taking him to the stand. I'm gonna have to scroll down here for the last episode, for the last case. I'm glad we can talk like this again. I'd forgotten how much I missed speaking with you. Yes, I only hope our next conversation isn't within a cell. Beatrice, on that night, what were you talking to Father about? I'm sorry, Leaf, but I can't tell you that. Beatrice, I just want you to know that I believe in your innocence. How are you so sure? Because you're my sister. I know you. Leaf, do you know the things I've done over the last 5 years? No. I can only imagine how difficult it was to survive. Survival would never be enough. I've had too much stolen from me. I've been denied what was rightfully mine, and it's taken me years to finally wrench it back. What are you talking about? I know you suffered under him, and I understand your pain. Once this trial is over, we can finally heal. I've already taken care of Steelwind. I simply need that boy to have an unfortunate accident. Bro. The fuck? Fuck you! You still have that dog, don't you? And you're on good terms with Tyrion, too. It should be easy for you to facilitate another unfortunate accident. What? I can tell from the sound of your voice that you don't have the stomach for such things. No matter, I can take care of that. But I suggest you keep quiet about this, or you might end up meeting the same fate as Father. You're just evil. What the fuck? Fuck you! Leaf trembled, her hand going to her mouth in realization of what her sister was saying. She said nothing in response. She just ran from the dungeons. Must you flaunt that ability so recklessly? You're making me envious. Nine hells, Eris, what do you want? Why wouldn't I want to see my favorite little mole rat? Damn, okay, fuck you, Beatrice. You know, I'm sympathetic to the why she committed the murder, but I am not sympathetic to her as a character. Court is now resumed for the trial of Beatrice Frege. Let us review yesterday's proceedings. There was much debate over William Frege's inheritance. More specifically, it was unknown whether the defendant had any claim to her father's inheritance. This detail was crucial in determining whether the defendant even had a motive to commit the murder. Luckily, the victim's will was supposedly read earlier today, and it is now a part of public record. What were the results of that will reading, Mr. Cuthbert? Mr. Cuthbert. William Frege was planning to leave all of his assets to Jaden von Sanctus, his hopeful son-in-law. However, this was predicated on the condition that Jaden marry the victim's daughter, Leaf. It was clear to anyone present that Miss Leaf would never follow through on this engagement. If the engagement is not made within 6 months, William Frege's assets would be divided among his 3 daughters. I see. So there was no mention of the defendant's disinheritance. Correct, Your Honor. This means that the defendant did have something to gain from the victim's death. Your Honor, despite the confusion around the victim's inheritance, there is still very little physical evidence that implicates my client. May I remind you that Miriam Frege was not telling the truth in yesterday's proceedings. That itself is extremely suspect. And William Frege is clearly not above manipulation and lying. You can't prove that she knowingly gave false testimony. She literally told me. I'll admit that I can't prove that. I'll also admit that there is a lack of apparent physical evidence to substantiate our case, which is why the prosecution would like to call Harold Haraldson to the stand. Lord Haraldson? The sword of spell eating clearly plays a large role in the murder, and its theft is one of the few pieces of physical evidence in this case. As the gallery's curator, I believe he can further elaborate on how the sword was stolen that night. More specifically, I can find out more about what he did on the night of the murder. I see. Bailiff, please escort Lord Haraldson to the stand. Witness, please state your name and occupation for the court. Of course. My name is Harold Haraldson. I'm the owner and curator of the Haraldson Hall of History, located in Holmhareth. That's quite the alliterative occupation. Harold, could you please testify to the court about how you discovered that the sword of spell eating was stolen? If it will help. I was keeping an eye on my gallery's exhibits when I realized that my familiar hadn't returned. I called to him telepathically, but he didn't respond. I became worried, so I went around the manor to search for him. About an hour later, I returned to the gallery and discovered that the exhibit holding the sword of spell eating was completely destroyed. The artifact was missing, so I reported the crime to the knights at the ball, and they activated a discreet lockdown. Luckily, we found the sword and my familiar later that night. Excuse me. So, you went to search for your monkey, and that's why you didn't witness the theft? Yes, the thief was probably waiting for me to leave. They must have wanted to commit the crime without anyone seeing them. Or his testimony is completely full of it. His search for Eugene must have been a cover that he's using to hide his actions that night. So how do you prove that? Cross-examination. I was keeping an eye on my gallery's exhibits when I realized that my familiar hadn't returned. Are you referring to Eugene? Eugene? Eugene Haraldson, Your Honor. It's the name of the witness's familiar. Yes, Eugene is a spry orangutan monkey. He helps me with my day-to-day. I see. Anyways, you said that he hadn't returned. Does this mean he left you earlier in the night? Yes, he always likes to explore large buildings like Frege Manor. But he usually doesn't leave for that long. I called to him telepathically, but he didn't respond. Does he typically ignore you like that? Sometimes. He's a young boy, so he likes to have his privacy. I try not to pry, but I was wary of what would happen if a noble or a knight came across him. He usually knows not to bother people, but you never know what might happen. I became worried, so I went around the manor to search for him. You left the gallery room. Yes, as I said, I was worried that something had happened to Eugene. Where did you go during your search? Eugene usually knows to stay out of people's bedrooms, so I went downstairs and searched for him there. I checked the bathroom, sitting room, and coat room. Then I finally checked the kitchen and pantry. He might have gone there to steal some snacks. But you didn't find him in any of those places. No, I didn't. About an hour later, I returned to the gallery and discovered that the exhibit holding the sword of spell eating was completely destroyed. If I recall correctly, the glass was completely shattered. This is despite the presence of several abjuration spells that protected it. Yes, it would have taken an extremely powerful spell to break it like that. As you saw, the glass display was shattered into pieces. Harold told me that the thief shattered the glass while the protective wards were active. But if he was involved, could he just have been lying? The artifact was missing, so I reported the crime to the knights at the ball, and they activated a discreet lockdown. The sort of spell eating makes its wielder immune to magical effects. What use would the lockdown have been? Honestly, not much. The wielder would have been immune to the anti-magic fields and the spells that prevented people from leaving. But at that point, the King's Guard just wanted to activate it for good measure. Luckily, we found the sword and my familiar later that night. His statement just now was missing some details. I needed to ask for something I could use against him. How did you eventually find Eugene that night? After an hour of silence, he finally responded to my telepathic messages. He met up with me in this gallery before we went to search for the sword. So, this would have been after the theft was reported? Yes. He would have had to pick up Eugene after he murdered the Duke. This must be the alibi that they're using to account for the time that no one could see Eugene. Anyways, this detail could be extremely important. Please add it to your testimony, witness. Harold? Harold. Yes, of course, Harold. This is a court of law, man. Eugene finally responded to my telepathic messages. I met up with him in the gallery room before they finally found the artifact. Timmy just now was in. I just want to see this. Because I know it's going to be the other thing, but I just want to see. How did you eventually find the sword of spell eating? The King's Guard and I slowly and carefully checked each room in the manor. After about an hour, we finally found the artifact under the bed in the defendant's room. That must be where Tracker hides the sticks that he finds. Now that I thought about it, he probably stole Celeste's sword too. Anyways, this detail could be important. Please add it to your testimony, witness. Harold. He says that he went around the manor to look for Eugene. Do you think he's telling the truth? Maybe. But his so-called search for Eugene gave him a good excuse to be unaccounted for. It's a decent alibi, but it's not without its flaws. I just needed to poke some holes into it. Okay. Objection! Harold, you found Eugene before you went to search for the sword of spell eating. That would mean that this all happened while the lockdown was still active, am I correct? Yes, as much as I was worried about the artifact, Eugene's safety was far more important. That's the thing, Harold. You said that after an hour of silence, you finally received a telepathic message back from Eugene. What? So that leaves one question. How did you communicate with Eugene telepathically, if you were both within an anti-magic field? What? Harold, in response to the theft, the King's Guard activated the lockdown system to prevent anyone from leaving. That same lockdown system would have placed an anti-magic field over every inch of that manor. The field should have suppressed the telepathic abilities given to you by familial bond. You wouldn't have been able to speak with Eugene at all. Please, Cuthbert. Please, Cuthbert is blowing this entire thing out of proportion. Anti-magic field is a resource-intensive spell. We can't assume that they managed to cover every inch of the manor. Especially the areas that would only be accessible to a small animal. Miss Tamora, let's assume that Eugene managed to reach some sort of blind spot in the lockdown system. The magical telepathy granted by familial bond connects two people. Even if Eugene wasn't affected by the anti-magic field, Harold would be. That's very true. So, how did I hear him that night? If there's only one answer that makes sense, Harold. You did hear Eugene telepathically. Because Eugene was wielding the sword of spell eating. What? I'm sorry, Mr. Cuthbert. Are you saying that the sword of spell eating was stolen by the witness's pet monkey? I am, Your Honor. It's the only way the witness's testimony makes sense. You wouldn't say something so ridiculous if it weren't true. Yes, I would, but okay. She didn't have a rebuttal. Like, push this wall, I still had the room. Harold Haroldson, you were the one who stole the sword of spell eating, weren't you? And what reason would I have to steal something that already belonged to me? It was to take suspicion off of you. Because you were the one who had William Frege killed. You staged the robbery and used the sword of spell eating to make Eugene invisible. Then you sent him through the manor's ventilation system. Also, you could have him murder William Frege in his study. Well done, Cuthbert. I suppose you can stop yourself from I suppose you just can't stop yourself from pursuing a lying witness. It's what I do best, Miss Timora. Of course. Witness, do you have anything to say in your defense? It's quite obvious, but I completely refute the prosecution's allegations. He's misguided, but he's just doing his job. I was expecting his thoughts to be hostile like before. Then, do you also refute your statement about Eugene telepathically speaking with you? I know better than to lie on the stand to try to save myself. I can't explain how it happened, but I stand behind my testimony. Eugene did telepathically contact me during the lockdown, but how did he do it? Wait, so he didn't know how the telepathic communication happened? Maybe he wasn't thinking about it when he planned the murder with Beatrice. And that's your position, Cuthbert? That the witness sent a monkey to murder William Frege? It may sound ridiculous, but it's the only thing that makes sense. Or do you have any evidence to refute that, Miss Timora? No, I fully and wholeheartedly agree with you, Cuthbert. Fuck. Wait. Tyrion? Mr. Cuthbert, did you forget that you were prosecuting Beatrice Frege? Your Honor, even as a prosecutor, it's clear that Cuthbert just can't stop himself from finding the true culprit. Wait, I also meant to say that the defendant conspired with the witness to commit the crime. Oh, really? And do you have any proof of this conspiracy to commit? Of course you don't. But even so. But let's assume that you did have evidence to prove your statement. If this was really a plot formed by my client and the witness, what could my client even contribute to this plan? From what you said, this plot was completely carried out by Lord Haroldson and his familiar. Well, the glass. You would have needed a powerful mage like the defendant to break the sword's display and stage the robbery. So her contribution to the murder was breaking some glass. Can you prove that my client shattered the display case? And can you prove that you did so knowing that it would somehow lead to her father's death? I might have been a little too eager to prove Harold's guilt. The physical evidence against my client was almost non-existent in the first place. Meanwhile, it seems the prosecution has just brought forward physical evidence that implicates Lord Haroldson. Physical evidence that is supported by his own testimony. There has to be some explanation for this. Cuthbert, didn't you ask me something yesterday? If my client didn't kill the victim, then who did? I suppose I should thank you for finding the answer. Damn it! All I did was make it more difficult to prove my case. But Harold had to be involved in this. I wasn't wrong about that. Only Eugene would be small enough to traverse the air vents. Wasn't there anything else I could do? With the threat of indictment, Harold must be stressed. It's gotten you out of tight... in the same fucking line? Okay. It's gotten me out of tight spots. Maybe I could find some evidence in his mind. You can use every trick you have, Cuthbert. It won't help you.
None can remain concealed.
I calmed my mind and focused the Eye of Horus on him. I needed to find something, anything, that might tie the murder to Beatrice. Well, it's a shame that things ended up this way. I truly hoped I could show you the value of Ivan God's history. It's truly a shame that Beatrice something or other. If only I'd introduced myself to her. Perhaps we could have found a solution together. He doesn't know Beatrice? But how? She planned the murder with him. Unless... I can't believe that one of my artifacts was used to commit a murder. It's completely disrespectful to the culture and history behind it. What? He was talking as if he didn't have any hand in this. But that can't be true, can it? What's going on? He's speaking as if he had no idea what's going on. You could guard yourself from the Eye of Horus, but you couldn't lie to it. And if that was true, was I wrong about Harold's involvement? Is he really innocent? Say anything, Cuthbert? Your Honor, it's clear that the prosecution has nothing left to argue. There's very little evidence implicating my witness. And there's a far more likely suspect in front of us right now. Oh, yes, I must agree, Miss Timora. At the very least, I see no reason to prolong this trial any further. Wait! Beatrice couldn't have personally done this. Discounting the fact that she's completely blind, she was with the two princes for most of the night. So who actually killed William Frege in his study? I needed to think about this. The reason why I suspected Harold in the first place was because of what Tracker said. Tracker's vocabulary is primitive and limited. He uses the word rat to describe small creatures that hide and act suspiciously. But even if it wasn't an actual rat, it still couldn't have been a human, right? You're right. It would have been a small animal. A small animal with the strength and dexterity to traverse a small air vent while holding a sword. Tracker definitely saw some kind of animal. Was it someone else's familiar? Who did Tracker see in the air vent? Right, it had to have been Eugene. Tracker found the sword in that hallway. And Eugene couldn't have communicated with Harold unless the sword protected both of them from the anti-magic field. But why? Why did Eugene just happen to be in the hallway? It also doesn't explain why the sword of spelling was even there. No, Tracker said that Eugene came out of the air vent on one side of the hallway. Then he fled into the air vent on the other side. Even for a small monkey, those vents would be extremely cramped. He wouldn't have entered those vents out of mere curiosity. Why was Eugene in the air vents? He knew that Harold didn't participate in the murder. Okay. But he did know about... But did he know about what Eugene was doing that night? What if... Eugene... was not acting? No. I couldn't be sure why Eugene was there, but it's unlikely that Harold even knew about it. Eugene was acting of his own free will. That's the explanation that makes the most sense. But how? And why? Harold is the only person who is magically connected to Eugene. And even if Beatrice somehow got Eugene to follow her orders, she wouldn't have been able to direct his actions telepathically. Beatrice couldn't use any other conjuration spell to contact him either. She was also in the anti-magic field when she was with Aster. So if Eugene was the one who murdered William Frege, was he acting independently? No, that couldn't be possible. How could Eugene have carried out this plan independently? This plan required knowledge of Frege Manor's ventilation system. It also involved murdering William during the lockdown and destroying his will. Eugene might be smart for a monkey, but a normal monkey wouldn't have known how to identify and destroy William's will, even if Beatrice had somehow trained him to do all this beforehand. Yeah, Eugene or Beatrice. No, it couldn't be. After the Sword of Spell Eating was reported missing, I checked the other exhibits. That's when I discovered that the armbands of intellect had been stolen as well. And unlike the Sword of Spell Eating, we still haven't found the armbands. I looked at the glass case where the armbands used to be. They'd been removed, but the glass case was completely intact. The thief didn't shatter the glass. Moreover, the armbands were actually replaced with a very well-made replica. How are they normally disabled? They can be turned on and off using a spoken password. And how many people know this password? Only myself. I personally oversee the transport of these items when they're moved. Only Harold knew the password, but someone could have overheard him saying it. Someone that's constantly hanging off of his shoulder. If I didn't play this right, this ridiculous accusation could end my legal career. I would have to be smart about this. Your Honor, I think there's one more witness that can clear up this discrepancy once and for all. I believe he can prove the prosecution's case to the record. Really? I frankly find that hard to believe. Please trust me, Your Honor. There's an element to this that we all aren't seeing. And it's one that no one would believe. What do you have planned now? Very well. I'll give you one last chance, Mr. Cuthbert. But know that if your next witness fails to unveil any new information, I won't hesitate to end this trial. I understand, Your Honor. So I'm going to need you to bear with me for a moment. Why? Your Honor, the prosecution calls Eugene the Monkey to the stand. The defense would like to cross-examine the witness's pet parrot. Never mind, I retract my earlier statement. I'll be passing my verdict. Wait, just bear with me for a moment. Mr. Cuthbert, I should find you in contempt for even suggesting this. Do you honestly think I'll allow a monkey to give testimony in my courtroom? Yeah, it sounds pretty out there even for us. I'd like to remind the court of the nature of Harold's bond with Eugene. Eugene is a familiar. This means that Harold Haraldson can speak with him telepathically. He can relay Eugene's testimony to us. But this is absolutely... Show me the law that says an animal can't give testimony, Your Honor. It may be unprecedented, but it's not against the law. You know, honestly, yeah, in this world with when familiars are a thing and can speak, I think animals should be allowed to give testimony here. Very well. Your Honor, are you serious? Oh, Miss Tamora, I am looking for any possible reason not to entertain this. But Mr. Cuthbert has a point. There are no laws against his proposal. So I have no choice but to oblige his frankly insane request for now. Well, I guess it doesn't matter. It's not as if this will reveal anything. I can't believe I'm saying this, but bailiff, please escort Lord Harrelson's monkey to the stand. Witness, please state your name and occupation to the court. I could do without the sarcasm, Miss Timora. Eugene is Eugene! Eugene Monkey! Bailiff, make sure the stenographer gets Harrelson's translations. I didn't see the armbands. He must have been at his normal intelligence. Although, how would he even wear them? Perhaps he held them in his hands on that night. Though they only require physical contact, after all. Eugene, did you steal from the gallery on the night of the murder? Ook, ook, ag, ag! Eugene never steal from Harold. Eugene respect Harold. Then you'll have no problem testifying about where you were during the Lord's ball. I can't believe you let you convince me to permit this. Witness testimony. Ook, ook! Eugene explore house. Eugene look for a new place to play. Ag, ag! Eugene also look for spiders. Spiders, yum yum. Ook, you think Eugene steal armbands of intellect? Ook, ag. Eugene never steal from Harold. Harold friend. Ook, ook, ag, ag. Eugene always Harold's friend. Apes strong together. Wow, you did it, Cuthbert. You blew this case wide open. Shut the fuck up. Is this really going to help us? Look, you'll just have to trust me on this. I trust you? That sentence sounded like it turned into a question at the end. Cross-examination. Eugene explore house. Eugene look for a new place to play. But Harold is an associate of the House Frege. Surely you visited Frege Manor before that night. The manor constantly changes, William always doing renovations. There's always a new discovery to be made. I suppose that made sense. William certainly had the gold for it. Anyways, what else did you do that night, Eugene? Eugene also looked for spiders. Spiders, yum yum. Do you enjoy eating spiders? Spiders go rich in nutrients. Wait, really? Some cultures in the Eastern Kingdoms eat roasted crickets. I've tried them. They're not actually bad if they're prepared correctly. I don't think I could ever be that adventurous. Can we please stay on topic? You think Eugene steal armbands of intellect? I wasn't accusing you of anything, Eugene. Perhaps you accidentally unlocked the case and took them thinking they were some sort of toy. This could all be an honest mistake. Eugene not dumb. Eugene know how important artifacts are to Harold. Eugene never take them from him. Eugene never steal from Harold. Harold friend. You might not have knowingly done it, but perhaps you took one of the artifacts by accident. Did Eugene never do that? Then how do you explain your brief contact with the Sword of Spell Eating? Harold couldn't have telepathically contacted you unless one of you was wielding it. Eugene don't understand question. You're right, he probably wouldn't understand how the sword worked without his heightened intelligence. Unless... Eugene always Harold's friend, each strong together. Do you consider yourself close to Harold? I would guess so. They literally have a magical connection with each other. Right, I suppose that the bond between a mage and his familiar would require a lot of trust. Harold saved Eugene from bad men years ago. Eugene would never betray. So you're a rescue. Batman locked Eugene in a cage. He told people to throw peanuts at Eugene. Harold take Eugene away from that prison, lock up bad men. You seem to generally care for Harold. Could that be why he did this? He clearly feels indebted to him. That might have been his motive. Tyrion? I know it looks bad, but I swear there's more to this. If you say so... There had to be something in his statements. He had to have been wearing the armbands on the night of the murder. Which thought revealed that? Think about how Tracker spoke. Was there anything different about the way Eugene was speaking? Okay, I need to blow my nose. Just hold on. Okay. Okay. You know, so look for spiders and men. Steal from him.
Objection!
Not that one. Oh. Hold on. Text log. Your Honor, the witness's thoughts contradict the evidence. Mr. Cuthbert, the witness's statements were many things, but it was not contradictory. Right, I suppose I see what you mean.
Objection!
Wait a minute. Eugene, I asked you before if you stole anything from Harold's gallery. Eugene, no! Eugene would never steal from Harold. Cuthbert, don't waste our time by having him repeat his statements. Repeat that statement. That's the thing, Miss Timora. That's not the same statement he made in his testimony. I asked the witness if he stole an artifact from the gallery. I never mentioned the armbands of intellect. Ook? What are you talking about now? The witness lacks the understanding to differentiate between the artifacts. If that's true, why did he use its actual name? I'm afraid I don't understand what you mean, Mr. Cuthbert. Your Honor, animals can't speak the same way that humans do. Even when a telepathic link is established, their vocabulary is extremely limited. Right! Tracker called this sort of spell eating a stick before. It was hard to understand what he really meant. Exactly. So that raises the question, how did Eugene know they were called the Armbands of Intellect? Wait, how did he know? The armbands were stolen during the Lord's Ball and replaced with a well-made replica. Where are the armbands of intellect right now? If he had worn the armbands when he was sneaking through the vents, he would have never had the opportunity to put them back on. To put them back. And the armbands were still missing. Eugene is wearing the armbands at this moment. It couldn't be. Was he really? The armbands were designed to be worn by humans, so Eugene couldn't wear them on his arms. So where would he wear them? I initially thought that he just carried them, but there's a far simpler explanation. Hold on, I've tried to... Let me bring up the text log. Fucking hell, man. Eugene, do you still maintain that you didn't steal the armbands of intellect? Eugene already told you! Eugene never steal from Harold. Then I suppose you wouldn't mind taking off your hat. Such a polite boy. You can't be serious, Cuthbert. Do you seriously think he's wearing them right now? It's the only thing that makes sense. The armbands were taken on the night of the murder, and they're still missing. If Eugene did nothing to steal the armbands that night, he would have never had the opportunity to return them. He had no choice but to continue wearing them until the investigation was over. This is absolutely ridiculous. You're spinning a fairy tale. If I'm wrong, the witness can easily refute my theory by removing his hat. Well, what's it going to be, Eugene? He finally broke character, his posture straightening into something far less primitive. His back straightened, his breathing became controlled. His arms became more deliberate in their movements. He slowly but silently lifted his hat, revealing what had been right under all of our noses. No, you can't be serious. Everyone could see it plainly. He was wearing the armbands like a crown on his tiny head. From out of his hat, I saw him pull out something else. Well done, Mr. Cuthbert. I shouldn't have underestimated you. Are you serious? So much funnier when Ace Attorney does it. Are you high? That's really high up. I love that line. This is probably a blessing in disguise. Acting like a common chimp was humiliating.
Objection!
Objection, Your Honor. On what grounds, Miss Timora? On what grounds? Everything about this situation is objectionable. It's downright absurd. Is he seriously Beatrice's accomplice? But, Miss Timora, we can't deny what's clearly in front of us. I was not ready for today. How is he even talking right now? Scholars believe that humans and apes evolved from a common ancestor. Perhaps all apes can speak the common language under the right circumstances. Evolved? Please, I've observed your society. I think calling yourselves evolved is being quite generous. Well, have you seen monkeys? Like, sir. It's... okay. This can't be happening. Well, are you done gawking at me, bloody Philistines? Oh, are you British? I should make him now. Philistines? Wait a minute. The Duke of Finance invites my museum to set up some displays here every year. You must think it adds a semblance of culture, the Philistine. Every insulting thought that I'd been seeing from Harold, they weren't Harold's thoughts at all. They were Eugene's thoughts. He'd been wearing the armband since we first met. But I still don't understand. Why would you even take the armbands in the first place? I'll admit that the Lord's Ball was one of many occasions. The first time I touched them was due to sheer chance. You put them on by accident? My unawakened self was enamored by its glittering sheen. I merely wanted to touch them, but when I first held them in my hands, I experienced a sense of clarity that was intoxicating. I was afraid of what I'd experienced, so I placed them back where they belonged. But as I returned to my primitive lifestyle, I couldn't help thinking about what I felt. You were hooked. I wouldn't quite phrase it like that, but I suppose you're not wrong. I heard the password to Harold's vault more times than I could count, so I'd come in from time to time and indulge in the armband's power. But the more time I spent with my awakened intellect, the more I craved its power when I put them back on. And that's when you made the replica. Well, no one was watching. I devised a plan discreetly. I have devised a plan to discreetly take the armbands. Harold would have eventually discovered that they were stolen, but he would have concluded that a noble from the Lord's Ball took them. Because of the pressure he was receiving from the crown. I'm not proud of what I've done, but I never expected things to reach this point. I didn't expect someone to steal a sword of spelling as well, and I certainly didn't expect a murder to happen that night. So you still maintain that you're innocent? Of course I do. I stole the armbands, but I did not murder William Frege, nor did I take the sword of spell-eating. Allow me to elaborate. Like his fucking pipe. Wow, okay. I'll admit that I took the armbands and replaced them with a replica, but I was not the crook who stole the sword of spell eating. The thefts were completely different from one another. The display case for the sword was completely shattered. I spotted the sword when I was exploring the manor. I was lying in the middle of a hallway. I wondered why such an important artifact would be lying there, so I took a closer look to inspect it. That's when I heard Harold call out to me telepathically. The sword must have protected me, and by extension Harold, from the anti-magic field. I wanted to take the sword and return it, but a wild dog chased me away from the scene. He has a point. He didn't need to shatter the glass display of... He didn't need to shatter the display case of the sword. Yeah, he already knew the passwords. But Tracker said that Eugene was the one who dropped the sword. Furthermore, he escaped into the air vent that led to William's study. His actions that night were definitely not as innocent as his testimony implied. He must have lied somewhere. Cross-examination. I'll admit that I took the sword of I took the armbands and replaced them with a replica, but I was not the crook who stole the sword of spell eating. You stole the armbands by using Harold's spoken password. Yes, I sit on his shoulder most of the time. He obviously never suspected what I'd do. It was a simple matter of listening to him when he was transporting the artifacts to Frege Manor. And I can assume that you knew the passwords for the other displays as well. I do. I could easily demonstrate that if needed. I doubted that he'd lie about that when we could easily check him. Even so, you already lied about not stealing the armbands. Why should we believe you now? The answer to that lies in the physical evidence. The thefts were completely different from one another. The display case for the sword was completely shattered. How do we know that you didn't shatter the glass to cover your tracks? Harold's password would have disengaged the locks, but they wouldn't disable the magic that protects the glass. The spells weren't even disabled anyways. Harold told you himself, didn't he? Only a powerful mage could have shattered the reinforced glass. But as a familiar, magic can be cast through you. Only Harold can cast magic through me. I can't cast spells by myself. And even if I could, Harold's spell compendium doesn't have a spell that's powerful enough for that. His logic was sound. But if what he said was... But if what he was saying was true, who shattered the glass? Anyways, I spotted the sword when I was exploring the manor. I was lying in the middle of the hallway. But that location was near the Frege's bedroom. Don't tell me that you... What do you take me for? Some primitive teacher... lecturer? Why do I say teacher, what? I know what a bedroom looks like. And I'd never enter one uninvited. Especially a young woman's. Then why were you there in the first place? Holy shit, we're the same age as the monkey. I was coming back from the rooftop garden, but I suddenly felt something interfering with the armband's magic. The anti-magic fields. Yes, I was worried that something had happened, so I made my way back to the gallery to meet up with Harold. I see. Could you add this to your testimony? Very well. I spotted the sword when I was heading back from the rooftop garden to the gallery. It was lying in the middle of the hallway. So you were heading directly from the rooftop garden to the gallery. But do you honestly expect us to believe that someone just left the sword of spell eating in that hallway? Think what you will, but it's the truth. Perhaps the murderer left it there after they'd been done using it. If the King's Guard found it there, they would have no idea who stole it. That did sound possible, but I still had my doubts. I wondered why such an important artifact would be lying there, so I took a closer look to inspect it. And that's when you made contact with it? Yes, I was quite surprised too. At the time, the magic of the armbands was being nullified. But when I picked up the sword, my intelligence temporarily returned. That's how I knew that I was holding the sword of spell eating. That's when I heard Harold call out to me telepathically. The sword must have protected me and, extension Harold, from the anti-magic field. I understand how it would have protected you, but how would it have protected Harold? Familial bond connects the magic of both targets. When one spell affects one target, it can also affect the other creature in the bond. The protection from the sword of spell eating extended to both of us once I held it in my hands. That made sense. That also explained how Tracker heard Leaf when he held the sword. I wanted to take the sword and return it, but a wild dog chased me away from the scene. Didn't you have enough time to grab the sword? You were holding it after all. I'm not proud to admit it, but my survival instincts took over. At that point, I was more concerned about escaping that wild animal. Tracker was several times larger than him. He would have every reason to be afraid. His story makes sense. There's no way he could have shattered the glass. I suppose so. Tracker saw him that night. He was definitely traversing the vents in that hallway. Which means he lied somewhere in his testimony. Is it this?
Objection!
Your Honor, it's clear that the assessment is contradictory. And this piece of evidence proves it.
I fail to see how that proves anything, Mr. Cuthbert.
Oh, I guess you're right.
Oh yeah, Tracker.
Objection!
Eugene, I'm sure you're well aware of this, but the best way to lie is to hide a false detail within many truths.
And what are you trying to insinuate, Mr. Cuthbert?
You said that you were heading from the terrace to the gallery. Did you take any detours?
Of course not. With the armbands nullified, my intelligence was slowly fading. I wanted to return to Harold as soon as possible.
Witness, I'd like for you to take a look at this floor map of Frager Manor. This is the location where that wild dog found the sword of spell eating. It's a very tiny W. So tell me, Eugene, how did you spot the sword of spell eating when it was hidden in the hallway north of Beatrice's room?
That's...
Why are you nitpicking such an insignificant statement? You probably just got distracted and went down the wrong hallway. This time more, Eugene came from the rooftop garden. And he was adamant that he went directly to the gallery to reunite with Harold. Even if his intellect was muddled, he was intent on reuniting with his word companion. He definitely took the direct route, but if he did, he would have never been able to see into that hallway.
I see your point, Mr. Cuthbert, but what does this mean?
It means that the witness lied about where he was before he discovered the sword of spell eating. He wasn't coming from the rooftop garden. He came from the air vents in that specific hallway. So why were you in that hallway, Eugene? You lied in your testimony. Was it because you wanted to hide what you were really doing that night? Eugene, you snuck through the air vent to avoid detection. Then you could use the air vent in that hallway to break into William's study. After that, you murdered him using his letter opener, didn't you? That's not what I went there to do. Oh, that's not an I. No, I didn't mean... Order in the court. Like this, is this true? Did you break into William Frega's study during lockdown? Yes, I did enter his study, but not for the reason you think. William Frega was already dead when I got there. What? What did you just say? It's true. Do you honestly expect us to believe a story like that? How could someone else have killed the victim before you got there? Tracker took the sword of spell eating, and you were the only intelligent creature that could walk through the air vents. I understand how unbelievable and suspicious it sounds. Why do you think I lied in the first place? But it's the truth, Mr. Cuthbert. You have to believe me. I didn't see any contradicting thoughts through the eye, but that hardly absolved him of any guilt. But could he really be telling the truth? If that was true, William, that only brought me back to the one question I've been asking since this all began. Who really did this? Okay, Eugene, let's assume you're telling the truth. Do you actually believe me? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. You're still my only suspect for this. But I'll give you the benefit of the doubt for now. I see. However, if you want to absolve yourself, I need you to tell me what you really saw that night. There might be something, anything, that might point to who really did this. Very well, I'll tell you what I saw. Although I doubt you'll believe me. I discreetly made my way to that hallway through another air vent. I exited the air vent in that hallway and tried to leap to the other side. I'm not sure if it was my waning intelligence or carelessness, but I collided with something that I couldn't see. I fell to the ground and found this sword of spell eating laying next to me. I wanted to retrieve the sword, but that wild dog forced me to retreat. After all, I continued to make my way to the study. And that's when I found William Frega. He was dead on the floor and lying in a pool of blood. And as if I were blessed by the skilled lord himself, I found the will that he'd been drafting, so I destroyed it. Frankly, Mr. Haraldson, I find that story very difficult to believe. I assumed as much, but you know what they say. Truth is stranger than fiction. Isn't it more likely that you murdered the victim? You're clearly trying to cover up what you did by saying that he was already dead. Honestly, I really don't know what to think. Was he really telling the truth? I discreetly made my way to that hallway through another air vent. I exited the air vent in that hallway and tried to leap to the other side. But why were you there in the first place? It all began when William Frega got into an argument with Harold. That cur wanted to defund the prestigious Haraldson Hall of History. I knew a man like William probably had many secrets. So I devised a plan to break into his study and find something that I could use to blackmail him. As you know, there's a small air vent in the hallway. It connects to William's study on the ground floor. I thought I could look through his documents while he was preoccupied with the Lord's Bowl. I wasn't aware that William was planning to stay at his study all night. I suppose that did make sense, but was he really telling the truth? What happened when you tried to leap into the other air vent, Eugene?
I'm not sure if it was my waning intelligence or my carelessness, but I collided with something that I couldn't see.
I thought monkeys were extremely dexterous. Are you just clumsy?
I have impeccable dexterity.
It sounded like I struck a nerve there.
I must have been muddled from losing the armband's magic. I fell to the ground and found the sword of spell eating lying next to me.
How did you know it was the sword of spell eating?
When I held it in my hands, I felt my intelligence return. But I also heard Harold call out to me telepathically. He was clearly growing worried, so I knew I needed to move quickly. I wanted to retrieve my sword, but that wild dog forced me to retreat. After that, I continued to make my way to the study.
Did this wild dog have a white coat of fur?
He did. Are you acquainted with him?
Something like that.
Well, next time you meet him, tell him that I don't appreciate being called a rat. I am a proud orangutan.
You can understand him?
I picked up a little of the canine language throughout my life. I'm also fluent in squirrel and pigeon.
Hell yeah.
I can also speak out, but I admit it's barely conversational.
As much as I wanted to test the validity of these claims, they weren't relevant to the case. What happened when you entered the study?
And that's when I found William Frager. He was down on the floor lying in a pool of blood.
It seems awfully convenient that he was murdered before you arrived.
I know how it may seem, but I am telling you the truth.
And do you have any explanation for how the assailant broke into the study without the sword?
I unfortunately do not.
Please, it's obvious your testimony doesn't match up with the evidence. Whoever did this either entered through the vents, or they used the sword to nullify the lock. And your own testimony states that the sword was abandoned in that hallway. It didn't match up with what I thought happened, but did it really contradict the evidence I had? Anyways, what did you do when you discovered the body?
I knew it was only a matter of time before someone discovered the body, so I quickly searched the room for something I could use. And as if I were blessed by the Scaled Lord himself, I found that will that he'd been drafting, so I destroyed it.
So you're the one who took the will. I've been trying to find it. What did it say?
I was pressed for time, so I didn't read the entire document. I only skimmed it and found an order to defund the Heralds and Hall of History. Since he went out of his way to specify that on the current copy, I concluded that his former will didn't have this addendum.
So you tried to save Harold's museum by ensuring that the new will would never be submitted for probate. Anyways, do you have the will with you?
No, my apologies. I crumpled up the will into a bowl and ate it. I then left the room before my intelligence was completely gone.
I was really hoping to see if William Frager followed through on his threat to disinherit Beatrice. It was hard to believe, but I couldn't see any direct contradictions. I didn't think pressing him anymore would get me anywhere. If Eugene did indeed do this, my next course of action was clear. Although, that still didn't explain how Beatrice fit into all of this. I remembered something that Tracker had said to me. Tracker, you said you had to smell to see where the rat was? And when he dropped his stick, you were finally able to see him. Does this mean you couldn't visually see him before he fell down? Yeah, Tracker couldn't see the rat with his eyes, so Tracker used his nose to see it. Eugene was invisible! Eugene, when you were carrying out your plan, did you turn yourself invisible somehow?
No, I hardly had the means to. And even if I had somehow convinced Harold to cast a spell on me, he doesn't know how to cast invisibility. Very few mages do.
Right, I remember Era saying the same thing during Wallace's trial. Only a master of illusion magic could do that. That's how I first thought Beatrice was involved. But if Eugene was truly innocent, did she turn someone else invisible? But, once again, that just put me right back where I started. No, I needed to think through this. Eugene's testimony filled in a blank that had been missing. I fell to the ground and found the sword of spell eating lying next to me. How did you know it was the sword of spell eating? When I held it in my hands, I felt my intelligence return. But I also heard Harold calling out to me telepathically. It was clear he was clearly growing worried, so I knew I needed to move quickly. I wanted to retrieve the sword, but that a wild dog forced me to retreat. After that, I continued to make my way to the study. I then cross-referenced that with Tracker's testimony. That's when Tracker smelled flying rat. Tracker could smell where Rat was, so Tracker barked at him. Tracker must have scared Rat, because he fell onto the floor and dropped his stick. How did the sword of spell eating end up in that hallway? So where does that lead us? The thief dropped the sword in the hallway. The thief dropped the sword in that hallway. But how did that make sense? Did they hide the sword there as I originally thought? No, that hallway was close to the gallery. There are plenty of better places to hide the sword. If it weren't for Tracker taking it, it would have been found even sooner. The thief must have accidentally dropped the sword there. That could only mean one thing. Why was the thief in that hallway? What if the thief was sneaking? The thief was also sneaking through the air vents. That's the only reason why they would be there, but that would imply that the thief was as small as Eugene. Could it have been another familiar? And if so, why didn't Eugene notice them? Wait. I'm not sure if it was my waning intelligence or my carelessness, but I collided with something that I couldn't see. He collided with something he couldn't see. In other words, it was something that wasn't visible to him. And as a master of illusion magic, Beatrice was one of the few people at the ball that could cast invisibility. Beatrice would never trust anyone enough to work together like this. She's completely blind. She wouldn't have much of a choice. She's not the type of person to trust her accomplices to stay quiet. She wouldn't leave a loose end open like that. Had I been approaching this situation incorrectly the entire time? Through the eye, I knew that Beatrice was involved somehow, but I just assumed that she had plotted this with someone else. The breaking of the glass and the casting of invisibility. These were the elements that I knew that she was involved with, but it never really fit together. Not unless she was the one pulling the strings the entire time. And there was only one way she could be in control the entire time. What did Beatrice use to commit the murder? What's this? Oh, invisibility. Okay. A couple of memories came back to me in that moment. Yes, this is my familiar Eugene. Oh, you cast familial bond on him. I'm surprised you know about it. It's quite rare. Very few mages take the time to learn how to cast it. Hi, I'm Tyrion. I'm Miss Timora's ward. Instead of taking my hand, she clapped her hands together and took a deep breath. What? Sorry. I didn't mean to do that. It's a bit of a habit of mine. Oh. I'm Beatrice. I've heard much about you. She shook my hand before looking to Miss Timora. I didn't know that she was blind back then, so I barely even noticed. But how did she know that I was holding out my hand? Well, do you have any other questions for me? If I were wrong about this, Beatrice would surely be acquitted. And after that, the Inquisition would turn its attention to Harold and Eugene. But there was only one way to know for sure. Your Honor, the prosecution has no further questions for the current witness. He is dismissed. What? I see. You have something else planned, don't you? Yeah, I actually need your help. Really? I whispered it into her ear. Really? You're making some big assumptions there. Wouldn't the Inquisition check for something like that? I know, but it's the best play we have. Do you remember what Steelwind said yesterday? But the moment the guards saw my body, one of them cast Detect Magic. With that spell, they would have seen any invisible people hiding in this room. Wait, you can use Detect Magic like that? Of course, it's standard procedure. Like all spells, invisibility leaves traces of magic on the person it's cast on. Some mages can use Detect Magic as a way to see them. If everything goes the way I think it will, I'll be able to prove its existence in front of everyone. Alright, I'll follow your lead then. So, Mr. Cuthbert, how do we proceed? Your previous witness brought about more revelations than I could have ever guessed. However, you still haven't given a substantial explanation about how the murder occurred or who actually did it. I understand that, Your Honor. But it will all make sense after I call my next witness. Another witness? I understand your hesitance, Your Honor, but everything that we've learned throughout these trials is finally coming together. And this final witness will tie it all together in a perfect knot. Your Honor, the prosecution calls Beatrice Frege to the stand. Why is the monkey still there? Seriously, Cuthbert? You went to all that trouble just to end up calling my client to the stand? You and your client have the right to refuse, Miss Timora. But I wonder how that will reflect on your client's character. It didn't really matter. She was already standing next to Miss Timora. We could carry out our plan regardless of what she decided to do. But it would have much more impact if I could bait her into lying on the stand. My client says that she's willing to testify. However, we would like to propose a short recess. With these new developments, I'm sure you can understand that we have much to discuss. I see no reason not to grant the defense's request. Is this really okay? If we give them the time to prep, they might realize what we're doing. I know, but I don't think we have anything to worry about. I'd been learning a lot about Beatrice since this case began. It was hard to read her expression and emotions, even with the Eye of Horus. She kept herself guarded and kept her true intentions unknown. She's more powerful than her father ever cared to admit. Despite this, he tried to control her and put her inside a cage. But Beatrice Frege would never live in a cage. She wanted freedom and control, and she would do whatever it took to get it. I'm sure the accident that blinded her didn't help things, but it also worked in her favor. Her blindness made people underestimate her, and she found a way to use even that to her advantage. When everything was said and done, she abandoned everything, her wealth, her status, even her family. She could have waited. She could have gritted her teeth until it was her turn to lead House Frege. If she was willing, she could have even secretly pushed her father past the gates of death herself. But she couldn't bear to live like that, even temporarily. I had no idea why this was how she chose to do that. Perhaps it had something to do with their meeting. But I do know one thing. Beatrice Frege would never put herself in a position of vulnerability. If I faced her head-on, she would respond in kind. In the interest of giving the defense time to deliberate, we will be taking an extended recess. Court is adjourned. As I was exiting the courtroom, I sent Celeste to do some reconnaissance. It should be similar to when she scanned Valentina during Wallace's trial. Tyrion! Celeste, were you able to see it? Yeah, it's definitely there. It sits on her shoulder most of the time. So she keeps it close to her. That's good to know. It looks kind of weird though. I've never used detect magic like this before. Well, I doubt that someone like her would choose a conventional animal, especially for something as important as this. Cuthbert? Miss Timora? There's something I need to show you. Preferably alone. Celeste gave me a concerned look, but I nodded to show her it's okay. She moved to sit on the bench and kept a careful watch on Beatrice. Okay, lead the way. I guess we'll find out what the fuck, Timora has to say next time. And we'll also finish out this case and prove once and for all that Beatrice is in fact the murderer. Bye-bye!